big, beautiful teak wheelhouse, beautiful ship. But I was with him down in Costa Rica with a crew, and I was up on the deck, and he was asking me to do something. We were mooring the boat near the docks there in some town in Costa Rica. I can't remember the exact name of the town, Punta Arenas or something like that. But anyhow, what happened was that I wasn't moving fast enough for him or something. He was uptight, and he said something, and I said something back, and he ran up on the deck and he kicked me in the butt, and I actually lifted up. My dad's a big guy. He was 6'2". He was a boxer in the Marine Corps. He didn't take no guff from me being brought up, but likewise, I didn't either. And when I thought he was, acting like a drunken bum, I let him know, and it got me slapped before, but he never would have socked me because he knows he probably would have killed me. But nevertheless, I had to stand up to him, and it was good. Sometimes it was a good thing. For example, one time I remember that he's a headstrong guy. He'll take the boat out into a storm at any given time. I mean, this is almost like he plans to do. He wants to be out in that hurricane. I'm telling you. But anyhow, this one time I remember we were moored in Sausalito. It's a town just north of San Francisco. And I remember you got propane tanks on a boat because they run the gas stove and refrigerator and stuff with propane. But I had smelled a little bit strong scent of this propane. They make it smell. They put garlic, I believe it is, to make it smell so that you know if you got a leak. It's very flammable. But I said, look, I smell it's too strong. He said, yeah, well, it's just venting. It's what it's supposed to do. But I opened the storage locker where the tanks were venting, and kaboom, I had an explosion right in my face. Luckily, it was confined to the storage room. It didn't even blow any doors off. I mean, it singed my hair and my brows and whatnot, and traumatized me a little bit. Of course, anytime you get an explosion in your face, it's traumatic. But this happened, and I might have saved the entire boat from exploding by investigating. So it's an example why even young people should stand up to older people when they believe they're right. We've got a duty. And it's harder. The younger you are, the harder it is to stand up to older people. But you've got an obligation. You've got a duty. Because I've been sailing out in these storms. I remember one storm on this boat we got into. And it was after we got the rigging. We had built the boat in Santa Cruz, but we had to take it to motor it up to San Francisco because there was no cranes large enough in Santa Cruz to lift the mast. It had an enormous mast that was about 50 feet high, and a secondary mast. It was a catch rig in the back that wasn't quite as big. But we went up there to have the mast stepped, is what they call it, by these cranes. That's why we were up there in the first place. But once the masts were stepped and we were in Santa Cruz, we were leaving Santa Cruz. This is how I missed my entire freshman year, by the way, because my mom and my sisters they were back east in Connecticut, nearby his mother. They were going through divorce and all this stuff, or nearby my dad's sister. My mom was having a hard time with the divorce. I think she wanted that support from his sister there in Norwich, Connecticut. But anyhow, we were leaving the Santa Cruz harbor. The masts were up. We were going to head south to San Diego was the destination. And my dad was asleep below, but I don't know how he could sleep because we were going out of the harbor, and these swells were enormous, and the boat went straight up. These trimarans are very lightweight boats. They're not like a monohull. They don't have a heavy keel holding them down. It's a whole different physics principle with a trimaran. You got one big hull and two smaller ones next to it. It's very symmetrical like that, not like an outrigger or something. It's not like a catamaran either. That's a different principle either. A trimaran is much more stable than a catamaran. A catamaran can flip over if it goes too far up. It's harder than a monohull, but a trimaran is very difficult. It really essentially is impossible for a trimaran to capsize because as one hull is having to lift, the other hull is sinking into the water. So what I'm talking about is when you're holding a lot of sail on the boat and it's heeling. They call it a heel. If it's real windy, the boat heels more. So a trimaran heels, but remember, as the wind's pushing against the sail and the boat starts heeling, it's lifting. So there's weight. It's got to lift one like a scale and at the same time submerge the other hull. And then you've still got the center hull that remains relatively level. It's very stable. But anyhow, we're leaving the Santa Cruz harbor with a these huge, enormous swells. The boat went straight up, just perpendicular and just straight down, vertical, slamming on the other side of the wave surface. We made it out of the harbor. I mean, dishes everywhere. It was, unbelievable. But there was a storm coming in, and I didn't, 14 years old, I wasn't listening to the weather report. You assume your dad is. But we get out there, and the wind's picking up. I mean, it's, 35, 45, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, I've had a lot of experience. I've been sailing with my dad in the Mediterranean. I did a lot of that. I'm not going to go into that too long. I've already gone into the sailing story too long. But it's another example of how sometimes younger people have to, step up to the plate in life. And, I was telling the guys, the other crewmates were utterly inexperienced with sailing. And so I had to be the guy out there telling them, look, we got too much sail up, dudes. You gotta reel in the mainsail, okay? Because, this is just too much. Because, I mean, it's stressing everything. I mean, everything's newly connected. I knew that the mast and the rigging was all new. You could see as, the rigging on one side, the leeward side, I believe it is, or windward side gets taut, from the wind blowing on the rigging that's holding the masts up and the boom and everything. And the other side, it's just flapping in the wind. I could see there was probably an adjustment needed. So, with my dad sleeping and all, I had to make these guys aware that this is too much sail at 14 years old. And it's tough, but, because people are arrogant. They have pride. No, how could this dumb kid know what he's talking about? But, nevertheless, I prevented at least, something bad from happening, because you bust the rigging, you bust your mast, you're swamped. You're dead in the water, basically, needing rescue. If that happens, because even if you got a motor, which all boats, most all sailboats have a motor, at least one of them, then, with your mast hanging in the water, you're going to have a very difficult time, doing anything, especially in a bad storm. And this storm turned out to be very bad. What happened was, of course, we're headed south from San Diego is south of Santa Cruz. It's about, I don't know, by a crow's flight, it's probably 500 miles or something. But we got blown north to San Francisco, and outside the Golden Gate Bridge, they weren't allowing any yachts to go in, any boats, any traffic under the Golden Gate Bridge, because what happened was the swells were so high, and at a high tide, these swells were getting far too close underneath the bridge. The ships, in other words, they faced the possibility of being lifted by a swell, these enormous ships, and being, crushing into the bridge from underneath and destroying the Golden Gate Bridge. So they were being told to wait it out. And this is the situation I was in. I mean, these were some of the highest winds ever reported in that area. We're talking about the winter of 1972-73. And they had, in fact, the night before the winds got so severe, they had closed down the Golden Gate Bridge to automobile traffic because they were reporting over 70-mile-an-hour winds on the bridge. And, of course, the risk of your car, actually, they don't know what kind of gusts you're going to have, are going to actually blow a vehicle over the bridge, which would be a horrible way to go. But anyhow, it's just another example of why young people sometimes have to, step up to the plate and, demand that this thing be scrutinized a little closer, and sometimes they've got to make their demands very, very clear, because you might be saving lives by so doing, and who can say that's not an important thing to do? I guess the reason I'm harping on this young people thing is because I want the best for the new generation. I don't want to be blamed. I don't want anybody to look back on my YouTube videos and say, here was a guy that didn't stand up, and now look what we've got. This utter crap hole. Now America is a third world, is worse than a third world country. Now, we're looking up to third world countries to a raise in our standard of living. Because that's what these people like Al Gore want, the New World Order. They don't ever talk about disruptive technology, okay, or planned obsolescence and how these things affect our carbon footprint. Okay, they want to reduce the standard of living. That's what they're all about. They're huge hypocrites. They have the carbon footprint of 10,000 men. They sicken me. I just want to vomit at their name. Okay, so understand that all you younger people, you need to step up and understand that Trump is the best hope America has, short of the return of Jesus, okay, to change things around. He understands economics, and that's the root of our problems. It's all economic, okay? It's all economic. Remember that. It's all economic. And, and this thing can be changed around. And then America sets a shining light example for the rest of the countries. This is the best thing we can do for them. We can say, hey, look what we did, how we did it, and follow that example. And the New World, it's the antithesis of what the New World Order cabal wants. That's why the establishmentarians are against this guy. All these neocons in both parties, the neoliberals, whatever you want to call them, all these people that are opposed to, getting these establishmentarians on a leash, okay, they hate Donald Trump. So, it's a no-brainer who to vote for here, the younger generation. Look, step up and speak out for this guy. Okay, he's not perfect, but for crying out loud, for the media to spend a whole week this close to the election on Donald Trump and the P word, give me a break. When they won't say not a whisper about Slick Willie and his rapes, folks. That's what we're talking about here. So this is obvious that the media is biased in the worst way. They're not admitting they're biased. They're not saying straight up, yes, I as a reporter, Andrea Mitchell, that's Alan Greenspan's wife, or Katie Turd, or these other women, okay, that are out there just promoting Hillary, and everything they say, you see the way they say it. They're lilting voices one way, and then they're condemning, tones in the other way. It's so obvious. These people, they're not actors, they're deceivers, and these people are delusional themselves. They don't know what they want. They're like spoiled, bratty children who don't know what's best, and they need discipline. And it's up to even younger people sometimes to discipline older people. Is that we don't always just trust our gut immediately. Like the video, watching the dog. I want the dog to tear into him. Is that God's will? Does he want the dog to tear? No, but that was my gut reaction. So it's not always right. We've got to step back and think and consider, what is his view? What is his opinion? What is God's will on earth? And if God's will is not to have Donald Trump as president, I don't want Donald Trump as president. But if I believe that God's will is that we have peace and justice and prosperity in America, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, yes, I believe that's what God wants, because God doesn't want us to have high crime. God doesn't want our nation in debt. God doesn't want the abortions. God doesn't want the dubious war. God doesn't want the drugs. God doesn't want the prostitution, and on and on and on and on. He doesn't want these issues for us. He wants us happy and free and liberated and safe and secure and prosperous, joyful and content. He wants all good things. Why do I know that? How do I know that? For one thing, it's written in the Bible. For another thing, it's logical. Anyone as good and awesome and mysterious and majestic and wondrous as the Almighty Creator God, whom we're made in His image and likeness. This is our owner, our parents. In our right mind, that's a relationship we want. Okay, that is a good God that wants the best for us. That's always consistent. The stream that flows from Him, from His heart and mind, from His spirit and soul, is consistent. It's always sweet. It's always fresh and never bitter. When He metes out justice, He does it His way. And His way is going to be to separate the wicked from the righteous. This is how it's going to be done. This is the whole heaven and hell thing. And the earth will be renewed. It will essentially be a heaven, because as it's written, there are many levels of heaven. When you're going to live forever, this is an eternity, eternal cosmic tapestry we're all a part of. It's a big, big, big deal. Okay, then you got to know there's always room to rise above, to reach up, and to be better and better people, to be better and better souls, to be closer and closer to the heart and mind of God, and to receive more and more treasures, more and more gifts, and to be happier and happier and happier, and have more and more peace and contentment, and more freedom. That's what He wants for us. How do I know that? Again, it makes sense, and that's what's written. He does not want His personality, His character, His nature hidden from us. He does His stuff in clear, bright daylight. Okay? The enemy does not. The enemy is surreptitious and sneaky, clandestine, evil. Okay? And evil hates good because good is opposed to evil. Okay? And liars hate truth tellers because they expose them. Understand what's going on here. All these things are fundamental and basic. And you say it's all just too simplistic, that it's really like that. It's true. Names don't matter. Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal, socialist, capitalist. No. No, forget let's supplant, let's say socialist capitalist. Let's supplant that with egalitarian, equal policies, equalitarian. I believe that everybody has a right to share in the wealth of this planet from birth. Gee, how radical. But what is God's opinion? What is his view? What is his belief? Am I embracing that? And what I'm saying so radical? Or is it logical and just sense-worthy? Okay, let's look at Democrat, Republican. Well, what does it mean to be a Democrat, Republican? It go back hundreds of years ago. The Republicans were the liberals and the Democrats were the conservatives. So it doesn't make any sense. The words have lost all meaning. So what am I? I'm just a voter. That's it. I'm just a concerned voter. I'm an American. I'm a patriot. So let's supplant Democrat, Republican with patriot. And if you're a patriot and you really believe your stuff, remember, you got to really believe it, because you're going to have to stand one-on-one before him and explain your beliefs, and he's not going to buy a lot of psychobabble that's rattling around in your head, my head, or anybody else.